The Florida Lighthouse Association is dedicated to the preservation, restoration, and protection of the 30 remaining lighthouses in Florida and the culture that surrounds that important part of our history. We do this through various methods, but we are most proud of our 2 grants programs. The Gene Oaks Lighthouse Grant Fund is dedicated to actual preservation and restoration efforts of our various lighthouse museums and organizations. The Tom Taylor Keepers Grant Fund is dedicated to other types of projects, such as those for education. In 2017, FLA granted tens of thousands of dollars in grants to various local organizations. This is the story of 2 of those. Jupiter Inlet Lighthouse, one of Florida's oldest, first lit in 1860, just before the Civil War, was in need of extensive repair of the metalwork. Josh Liller picks up the story.
At the end of last year, 2016, we realized there were some issues with the lighthouse, some minor issues related to paint deterioration that was going to need to be done within the next couple years, but some major issues with the roof, some rust, some potential holes that we really wanted to deal with, preserve the tower, especially its interior, and make sure that our first order Fresnel lens, one of only 13 active in the entire United States, would be safe. So we also wanted to decide at this point we did not want to just use the cheapest route available. We wanted to use the best people for this project to make sure the work was done top-notch and would last the longest.
The reason for doing the work on these structures is this one is about 167 years old, and age and weather conditions and the salt air from the ocean, high winds, hurricanes, we get a lot of erosion issues, and then we get water intrusion, rusting, deterioration. So naturally we have to repair those issues. We also have rust on the iron skirting here, underneath the catwalk up here, and on the outside. So on this door here, we had some issues with the hinges. They're wedged and they're driven into this board here. And these were paper thin, and we used to have issues closing and opening the door. We used to have to really mess with it. So Alex, he is the iron worker. He came and he took these out and he welded on here to keep the original hinges intact to the lighthouse. That way we preserve all as much as original as we can. On the outside of the astracals, we would have water intrusion that would run down and sit inside, and the rusting would rust from the inside out.
We went to Ken Smith, the lighthouse architect. We went to Joe Cockey, the lens specialist, Alex Klom, metalwork, and Razorback LLC for the actual contracting and painting. We got our estimates on what needed to be done. We had to encapsulate the lens to protect it from any possible paint dripping or any other damage while the roof and ceiling were being worked on. And we got a quote, and we had it ended up being $160,000 direct budget just for the work to be done, not even counting any revenue we would end up losing due to being partially closed for a month. We started a fundraising campaign through our mailing to our past supporters. Through that, we raised about 200 individual donations, anywhere from $10 all the way up to about $5,000. We even got a small donation from the George Meade Society, George Meade being the original designer of our lighthouse, and the Jupiter Island Historical Society made a donation as well. But the bulk of the funding came from a few major grants. The town of Jupiter gave us a major grant for the lighthouse's preservation because of its history and its economic impact for local tourism. The Bureau of Land Management, the property owners, gave us a grant toward the project. The Loxahatchee Guild, a local fundraising organization for historical building preservation, gave us a grant toward the project. But most important of all, we got $30,000 from the Florida Lighthouse Association. This came from the Gene Oaks License Plate Fund. And this $30,000, big part of the $160,000 total that we raised in about 3 months. We were able to get the project started on time. Everything went fairly smoothly. Got everything done in about 5 weeks, from darkening the light to having it relit.
For us, having a go-to place when we're up against something suddenly, like recently we had discovered under layers of rust that there was nothing on the roof of the lighthouse, and we needed to fix it fast, and luckily before the hurricanes hit. So we had recommendations of who to have fix that through our network at FLA. But also we could write a grant and send it to the Lighthouse Association Grant Committee and get the money quickly as the seed money for what became a $160,000 project, and we got the $30,000 that we could go out and match quickly with other grants, other foundations, and even more wonderfully, the community, when they saw, oh, the Florida Lighthouse Association gave money, we're gonna back this too. That's our lighthouse. So you know, it's a big part. It's part of our DNA now, the association.
On Florida's Gulf Coast, Gasparilla Island Light is one of the newest, first lit in 1932.
I began working with Barrier Island Park Society as their executive director in 2006. And when I came on board, one of the dreams of the organization was to someday acquire Gasparilla Island Lighthouse, which the locals call the Old Range Light. The structure was so rusted that people were fearful that it would go over in a big storm like Irma that just passed by, that it would literally tumble. Even the Coast Guard deemed the catwalk, the outside area that you would walk around the lighthouse, they deemed it unsafe. So it was in critical condition to be repaired and restored. So we had a great team that we brought together. We had Ken Smith, architect in Jacksonville. We had Razorback, Anthony Hooley with Razorback. We had Alex Klom, who's a master metalsmith. We had just an awesome, amazing team, and all of us worked really close together. And they were there day in, day out, sometimes not even taking breaks for weeks at a time, trying to get the lighthouse in good shape and have it restored, stabilized, restored in great shape for it to be able to be open to the public. We went to FLA, Florida Lighthouse Association, and had asked if they would help us with some seed money to help get the campaigns kick-started. They were an integral part of that beginning phase of our campaign, and we were able to quickly raise money, thankfully to FLA, but also our community, who has a great love and passion for that lighthouse, who have really greatly supported us, along with others that just love lighthouses in general. And we started working in April of 2016. We were able to begin work on the restoration process for Gasparilla Island Lighthouse, and we were finished in April of 2017. So we were able to begin opening it up for public climbs, which we've been very excited about, and people from all over have been coming to climb the lighthouse, which is wonderful. A lot of grants, for those that are not familiar with grants, is that it's a long process. It's a long, drawn-out process. So you can go ahead and write a grant, and you get it in by the deadline, and then you have to wait usually 6 months or so for it just to be looked at and maybe approved, and then you usually wait another 3 to 6 months before you actually get the money. So usually from the time you write a grant to the time you receive a grant, it takes a year. And it's really hard sometimes, especially when you're managing a lighthouse and you have needs, to have to wait a year. And in this case, we were very anxious to get started. And one of the things I loved about Florida Lighthouse Association is how quickly you could write a grant and get the money. It's just an amazing process. I think they do a really fine job with their granting committee, does a fine job, because you're able to get those funds so quickly when you really need them.
Each year, we come to you, the members of the Florida Lighthouse Association, and ask you to invest in the important work that FLA does. FLA depends on donations from our members to carry on this important work. Each year, a few of you give significant gifts, others give a little. We depend on all of you giving to help this cause, the preservation, restoration, and protection of Florida's 30 historic lighthouses. Will you please consider making a commitment today? Members of the Lumen Society give $250 each year. Beacon Society members are those that give $500 each year. And our Prism Society members give $1,000 each year. Another option is to give monthly. A gift of $25, $50, even $100 per month makes it possible for the Florida Lighthouse Association to do this important work. A few people will donate a lot, and many people will commit to a little. It is important that all of you consider giving to this important cause. Thank you for your continued support.